Let's start. Great to see you. What a wonderful group of people who've come here for the talk. Thanks to Patrick for volunteering to record this, and Gamitra for inviting me to talk. It's obviously a talk by the Humane Technology Association, organized. My name is Arnar. I work with East of Moon, and I'm one of the organizers of this space, Hafnar.haus. Since it's an intimate setting, maybe you should just feel free to barge in and say and ask questions if you like. The part of the title of this talk is how to fall in love with the internet again. So it's really sparked some interesting discussions here in Hafnar.haus and in the office. So I wonder if people can relate to this falling in love with the internet and then maybe falling out of love with it. This is me. When I was moving houses 8 years ago, I found this old chain mail, or mail as it's called, which is something I made in 9th grade. And I found the directions to make it on the internet. And at that time, this is the early 90s, there were no other places where you could learn how to make chain mails. And I thought it was really cool. And I thought the internet was really cool. And nobody else in my class thought it was cool. But I think that I and a lot of people at the time instinctively knew that this thing was going to be something. And all we needed to do was to get everyone to go onto it and then put everything on it and do everything through it, and that would be something very transformational. And so it's been 30 years since I was making chainmail through directions on the internet, and we've kind of arrived at that point. But there's a strange nostalgic sense of loss, weirdly, at least for me. I don't know if you relate. If you also fell in love with the internet but are struggling with that relationship now. And recently, the most powerful politician in the world was inaugurated, the President of the United States, and on front bench were all the owners of the internet. So that's great for the internet, isn't it? It's finally getting its due. It's not like a nerd in 9th grade that knows something that others don't. Like 30 years later, we all know about it. But there's a weird feeling somehow for some of us. Gamitra asked me to do this talk. This is not verbatim, actually. We speak in Icelandic, so I kind of summarized and translated it. But I made the mistake of asking her for a very clear question, even if it was challenging. And this was kind of her response. The last talk in this series was by Thorlaug, and she was talking about techno-capitalism and its negative effect on democracy. And so Gamitra sort of challenged me to come with something positive and ended with this, what do we need to love the internet again? And so as I had really asked her for a challenging question, I had to live up to that. And that was hard. And I discovered that it's actually a lot more easy to criticize the internet and how horrible it is, and criticize the world and capitalism and society, than to actually figure out how to love it. Maybe that applies to humans as well. I don't know. So this is the end. This is the framing of the talk. Pessimism of the intellect, optimism of the will. How can we fall in love with the internet again, perhaps? And so we know we're living in the times of digital robber barons, techno fiefdoms, and mounting global tensions. And so, how can we see the positive in this? And I figured that I wouldn't really spend the bulk of the time talking now about how horrible the internet is, because I figured most of the talks in this series are going to be all about that. But sort of really briefly, maybe you have other things that is horrible about it. But our public space for debate has been privatized. We're being manipulated by algorithms that we are not really in charge of, and we can't really see. We have network lock-ins where if we want to communicate with our friends, we have to be on certain platforms. Data is being collected and we're being surveilled. Our attention is being harvested. We sort of have figured those things out now. And as we're doing this, a part of a series on humane technology, humane doesn't quite mean human, I'm aware of that, but it's often a question that gets posed. It's like technology for humans or technology for something else. So I kind of wanted to start there. So my plan is to really try to figure out what is the ultimate question about technology, and then come kind of with an optimistic spin on that. I don't know if that's possible, but the question of humans and technology is often posed, right? Is this technology fit for humans? Is it doing things for humans? And so I wanted to start with a beginning. This is a human and this is technology. And the last talk was called Techno-Capitalism something. And I want to make the point that actually this machine is technology, and there is actually no capitalism without technology. Because another word for capital is something that is produced to produce more things, right? So a machine is capital, and technology is capital. So we can just say capitalism if we like. And so this relationship between the man and the machine is where we're going to start. Is it a good relationship? Are we subjected to the machine? Do we control the machines, or do the machines control us? And obviously, computers are also just machines. So we started with machines that could do stuff, physical stuff. And then once we kind of figured out the physical things of moving stuff or making things or moving ourselves, all these kind of more bodily replacements of what we were doing, we went into the intellectual. So around World War II, all the countries in the world needed to calculate a lot of stuff. So they employed lots of women, primarily because the men were out fighting and doing other stuff and carrying stuff. And they were called computers. And they sat there and they computed all day. And at some point, because people needed to figure out so much, they had to calculate ciphers for cryptography. They had to calculate missiles and ballistics and all that kind of stuff. So they just had to calculate so much that they started making machines to do that. So I want to make the point that computers are just that. They're capital, they're machines that we use to make new things. And sort of around World War II, this cartoon came out. Have you seen this, Fantasia? Mm-hmm. It is a really wonderful cartoon where Mickey Mouse is an apprentice to the sorcerer, and he is tasked with mopping the floor or something like that. And he gets bored with it, just like we were bored with doing stuff. And he uses his magic to turn the broom into something that works for him, right? So he creates capital out of the broom or technology. And obviously it goes all wrong. He loses control of it, and it starts to mess everything up. And maybe it's not a coincidence that this film comes out around 1940s with a very accelerated technological advancement. But what less people might be aware of is that this is actually based on a poem by Goethe from the late 18th century, which is, as well as you know, the start of the Industrial Revolution. So I kind of wanted to just make the point that we've been struggling with this question of technology versus humans for quite a long time, actually, from the beginning of technology or capital. And a few decades after Goethe, these guys came along. These are the Luddites. You will know them because whenever somebody's against the technology, they will be told that they are Luddites. It's like a negative word. It's a slur for anyone who doesn't like technology. And these guys really didn't like the machines. They were skilled spinners and textile workers who really knew how to make nice clothes like this, I suppose. I think it's nice. But some guys came along with machines that made shitty clothes, and worst of all, they didn't need the spinners anymore. So these guys were the Luddites, and they were really massive struggles where they would come and they would smash the machines. And thousands of military men had been mobilized to protect the machine. So some of us have come to the conclusions that we just want to smash the machines. And it's a valid question, because if you look at the textile industry today, it's pretty shit, isn't it? It's like our clothes, they can be washed twice and then they end up in a landfill. So I guess there's a point to it. But I'm not sure if I want to frame it as being man versus technology, because I also kind of like my machines. And I think it's easy to forget that very soon, not so much time ago, our grandparents or our ancestral mothers, they spent most of the day just carrying things, right? So this is a statue of Laugavegur where women would just have to carry the washing from there in Bankastræti up to where the pools are. And technology really has liberated us from having to just be carrying things all day long, and really has allowed us to do wonderful things. I mean, we're sitting here and kind of, having intelligent thoughts about the internet and whatnot, but most of us probably wouldn't be able to do that if there weren't machines that can carry things. So the problems of the machines is perhaps not the machine itself, but somehow our relationship with the machine. And in some way there is a human that owns the machine, right? And the problem of the Luddites perhaps is their relationship, that they were not the owners of it, that their livelihood was stripped from it, by the machine. So let's accept that. There was also a picture of a woman, by the way, but I didn't feel like having a nude woman here for you, so I hope you appreciate that. The interesting bit is that this whole question of how how technology is stripping away the skill and the talent that we have acquired, and that makes our livelihood, and is using it for the benefit of someone else, is really still so much ongoing. So this is like 2 days or 3 days ago in the office, we were goofing around taking those pictures, and within seconds, Alec had used this filthy machine to make it into Ghiblify it. And I don't know if you've seen the excruciatingly painful video of Hayao Miyazaki, the director of this studio. It's actually, it's filmed 8 years ago in another context, but he's like, this is an insult to life itself. He really would become a Luddite back in the day and smash these machines up. So shame on you, Alec.
But it makes for great presentation material.
Thank you.
I will bear the shame for the sake of your presentation.
Okay. All right. So anyway, I mean, just to make that point that as humans and technology is very much an ongoing problem. And now I want to go to the guys from the beginning. And you may start asking the questions that is very typical in this kind of conversation, which is like, why are you talking about the machines, and why are you talking about owners of the machines and the people who, and means of production? This is all very 19th century. What does this have to do with Facebook and Google and those things? And there's a link that is important to understand in this discussion, which is that capitalism changed a lot some 100 years ago. So whereas the typical thing that was described by like Marx in the 19th century was, here's a capitalist, he owns the means of production, and because he owns it, he can employ this naked man on the left to work for him, and he doesn't pay him all the money. and he controls the production because he owns the machine, right? And so this is still going on. But what happened around 100 years ago is that finance sort of started to extract things from this productive capital, right? So it's really hard to think about Facebook or Google or Amazon in the context of this kind of 19th century industrial machine analogy. But let's try. Let's see what Facebook was and started out as. So Mark Zuckerberg and his team of geeks back in university, they created a machine which was like pretty unoriginal social network code that you could see as technology, as a capital, and they put it out there, and lots of people in their school liked it, and they started to use it, and it was sort of useful for people. Otherwise, they wouldn't have used it, right? So it created some value as a tool, as a technology, as capital. But then came along the evil genius Peter Thiel, and he brought a lot of finance. And so this is how finance eats up productive capital in today's world. This is sort of important to understand the situation that we're in. And Peter Thiel is the evil genius that says out loud the stuff that you're not supposed to. And he has done wonderful lectures like competition is for losers. And if you even listen to Zuckerberg, he will explain to you that when Peter Thiel came along with his finance, he's the one that explained the network effects. He's the one that explained that you needed to create a monopoly in order to make any proper money. So basically, Peter Thiel explains, and he is right, that capitalism and free markets and competition are really not compatible. Because in order to, if there was actual competition in capitalism, like at least a perfect competition, let's say, then all the profits would be competed away. And the only way to make real profit from your finance capital is to have some sort of a monopoly. And so Zuckerberg, was he a good guy? Would we have liked him? I don't know. But he went from being a geek that made something for his college into becoming that sort of which you could call a digital baron or whatnot. And so by buying up with finance all the competition such as Instagram and WhatsApp and such things, they ensure that they monopolized our social network. And we actually, if we don't want to risk losing connection with our friends, or for example, inviting you guys to this meeting, we really cannot do without using their product. And so through this finance, they actually use this to extract profit from the productive capital. Sorry, guys. Did you realize it was such Marxism? Just like Che Guevara said, it's not my fault that reality is Marxist. And I know that you know all these things, the critique, and so that's what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to try to kind of like frame it like that. And so this is described in Lenin's imperialism, which is monopoly capitalism as the highest form of capitalism. But this is also techno-feudalism that you've probably heard about, a book written by Yanis Varoufakis, although I haven't actually, I don't know if Yanis Varoufakis has ever quoted Lenin about it. But the point here is that the tech industry is actually not producing anything anymore. They are more like the lords of the 18th century or 17th century that own a certain domain, and they charge rent from those who are producing things. So taking Apple as an example, if I make an app and I want to sell it through the App Store, which I have to because half of you have iPhones, I have to pay an extraordinary amount to Apple. Apple doesn't produce anything. So as a capitalist, if I'm making an app, I'm actually being exploited by the Apple overlords, which is something that takes a while to wrap your head around. And that's the techno-feudalism, or that can be compared to feudalism, okay? And so, any questions? No. You're welcome. It's the truth. Okay. So here's the thing. Why does the internet feel so horrible, whereas it felt so interesting and rewarding and cool before? In order to keep control over these digital fiefdoms, the whole internet experience is optimized towards that, keeping the control, keeping us there, keeping us engaged, and keeping everyone else out. And so this is not new. If you have worked in a very technologicalized factory, like the fishing industry in Iceland, you will know this feeling of 20 years ago, I worked in a fish factory for a short while, and you would come in the morning, and you had a chip, and you would chip in, sign in at the assembly line, and a guy in a tower with dark glass that only he saw through would see precisely to the minute how much fish you would produce and how many faults the fish would have. And so if you came there, for instance, and you hadn't rubbed your eyes and taken out the things that have in your eyes in the morning, or done anything personally, or if you were feeling kind of weak or something, they would see it immediately and react to it. And this is what has been called alienation. It is when our whole self and our bodies, our work, everything that we do has been put at the service of someone else, right? And so that's Chaplin's take on it. And we are used to thinking about this in terms of the assembly line in the factory, that we enter into this space, okay? And designers, engineers, psychologists, all the brilliant people have spent a lot of time optimizing every single inch of the factory floor and of the process of producing to extract as much possible work out of you as they can. But then is that glorious moment when the bell rings and you take a shower and you leave the factory and the sun is shining and you just walk, and there's that relief of getting out of that space. And the particular horror of the time that we live in is that factory still exists. So this is a quote from an early employee of Facebook, Jeff Hammerbacher. For you literary people out there, you will spot that it's a reference to Howl by Allen Ginsberg. The best minds of my generation are thinking about how to make people click ads, and that sucks. And so I want to propose that perhaps the specific yuckiness of our period is that our whole communication, our whole entertainment, our whole way of interacting with the world and through what we interact, which is living in our pockets and our computers, is now become that factory floor that has been optimized by designers, engineers, and so forth, programmers, to essentially make us click ads. Shocking. Now, you all knew that, didn't you? Okay. That was the bummer. Now, look, something that we've been talking about and thinking about, as I've explained to you, that we live in an alienated world where our whole communication and interactions with each other is being optimized for somebody else's extractive profits. Okay, and that's why I've been thinking about the imperfect internet. And some of you are members of this space, Hafnar.haus. And I don't want to glorify this or paint this as some sort of an utopia, but I just want to contextualize what we, or let's say I, really hope for in this space and what we're creating here in the context of what we talked about before. And so the underlying thought behind making this space was that it should be an imperfect space. It should not be optimized for something else. And if you think about it, the way to optimize a building like this in the middle of the city center for profit would be to make it into a hotel or a souvenir store or a food hall or something like that, right? And so we don't have that here. We have a space that is not optimized for profit. And it's not even optimized for artistic value, as I've pointed out and people have made fun of. I mean, we've got mediocre people here. We've got poor artists. We've got beginners. We've got famous artists. Unlike some export offices for Icelandic art, we are not accepting people here based on their market value or the potential for export for Iceland or whatever shit there is. And further, this is a bit of a messy space sometimes, and that can be annoying. But we've tried to make it a space where if there are patches on the wall, that becomes a dog because somebody made it, right? And if there is a little bit of a space not used, somebody can make it a free stuff exchange. And that's not that the user is stepping into it and it's been made for them. It's like it's a space which you can make your own, which is the opposite of the factory floor or the current social media that we live in. And it is annoying sometimes because somebody just left a lot of pallets there, and but that is what you live with. You live with the fact that sometimes people mess it up, and messing it up is somewhat part of the process. And also the CSS, for anyone who used the app that we make, they know that this is very imperfect as well, and that's very intentional also. But I don't want to overstate the potential of this, but I do think that that the opposite of the reality we live in is that thing outside of Patrick's office, which is please disturb, like please mess with this, please be a human inside of the space and experiment with your needs. And we have our own internet in this building, or our own kind of social platform, and that's not threatening Jeff Bezos or anything like that, but it is an interesting way to think about, as Gamitra asked me to, of like how can we make our own thing that is in some way positive. And by creating our own thing here within this this community, we are making something that's not necessarily better technologically than Facebook, although Facebook is kind of bad. Not something that is more just or has better user service or terms, but it's something that is sort of ours. And if you think about the factory and the textile Luddites, it's bringing a bit back that potential of creating our own thing and our own reality. And now I'll really go to the optimism, okay? So brace yourselves. 1450, as you know, within Europe, the printing press was invented. It had been invented in China before, but whatever, we don't really think about that. And the whole information age was unleashed, okay? But very soon after that, and we had the Reformation and, you know, all kinds of new ideas, and mass media became a thing, and everything. Very soon after that, the state became extremely aggressive in policing who could print things. And in this country, I think there were only 2 printers or something, and they were both at the service of the church. And so if you printed the wrong thing, you would die, you would be hanged or flogged or whatever. And we started to see the intense reaction of power to the printing press. Nonetheless, we credit this with the information age and enlightenment and whatnot. And so it wasn't until with the American Revolution or the French Revolutions that we had the potential to have constitutions that protected our right to say things. So for 300 plus years, we had the ability to print thousands and millions of books, hundreds of thousands of books. That was relatively easy, but we did not have the right to say whatever we wanted in them. We couldn't necessarily criticize the government or whatnot until these revolutions. In 1956, when the Cuban Revolution happened, almost half of the population couldn't read or write. And with a literacy campaign that was organized, within 1 year, almost everyone who couldn't read and write were taught that. So it wasn't that hard, but it still took 500 years to teach everyone to read and write. And even today, we still have 14% of the population that can't read and write. It's a long time that it took from the technology to emerge to us have the social power to actually use it properly. Okay? So this is where I took my the title of my talk from. I think our challenge, that of our times and modernity, is to not have any illusions about how bad Zuckerberg and Trump and Jeff Bezos and such are, but still not become disillusioned. So to completely intellectually understand the problem, but to also think that maybe the internet is not dying, but maybe it's like the printing press, where it's just starting. We've got the technology to connect millions of machines together and be instantly connected, but we sort of haven't really developed the social rights and the social positions and relationships to actually take part in it and use it. And the last slide being, and that's why I went through this long talk of the machine and the man and so forth. How do we fall in love with the internet or the machine again? I think the important thing is like, and this relates to very concrete things that are being debated here, because sometimes the discussion becomes about man versus machine, which is not a discussion we need to have. And sometimes the discussion becomes about, okay, we want the owners of the machine to be more ethical and not screw us over that much, or like give us certain rights. And I think, going to the Luddites, I think that what I want, and I think that maybe what we should want, is that machine becomes an imperfect space that we can mess with, we can hack, we can make an extension of ourselves, and we can collectively own the means of production. Thank you.